Okay, well, it's just after 3 o'clock, about 3:01 to be exact. So we're going to get started. We take care of everybody's time and honor that. But we're so pleased to have our guests with us today. So thank you all as attendees and panelists for joining us today. This is webinar number 12 in a series of webinars for small business navigating the impacts of COVID-19. I'm Barbara Coffey, Director of Economic Initiatives for the City of Tucson. We have another great lineup of speakers for you today. We'll start our hour with some ways that we can support our Black-owned businesses in Tucson. And then we'll dive into the Pima Back to Business conversation around reopening. As always, we will take your questions as we go, so feel free to enter your questions in the chat box or the Q&A. We'll get to as many of those as possible in our time together this afternoon. We will ask all participants to stay muted since we have a large number of attendees. We'll certainly record this session and make it available for everyone tomorrow. You can find links to all our previous webinars at connecttucson.com, and typically we post the Monday webinar by noon on Tuesday, so you'll find a link to it there. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce our first guest speaker, Ashley Larussa. Ashley is owner and founder of RU Events, an event management company with a primary focus on supporting the growth of organizations and community leaders that foster equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. She's currently working on the Blax Friday project, creating an accessible list of Black businesses in Tucson with goals of creating a website, app, and online event scheduled for later this month. So I know you're going to hear more about that. She serves on the Local First Arizona Steering Committee and on the Board of Directors at the City Center for Collaborative Learning. Ashley partners with owners of hotels, co-working spaces, and event venues to strategically plan how to serve the community as a whole. In 2018, she was the projects manager at Downtown Tucson Partnership. Prior, Ashley held various positions at Arizona Theater Company. Her work in the community runs deep and wide, and I'm glad she could join us today so we can listen and learn about some important projects that will be extremely impactful in our community. So Ashley, why don't you get us started by sharing about the Blax Friday project, things you're working on, and how we can get involved and do a better job at promoting, supporting, and patronizing our Black-owned businesses in Tucson. Ashley?
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, City of Tucson Office of Economic Initiatives. Bear with me now as I go to share my screen, which is always a very exciting thing to do. I'm just gonna discuss not only RU events, but also Black Friday and Black businesses here locally.
Great.
Alrighty. Does everyone see your screen?
Yes, you're good.
Awesome. So here we are spotlighting Black business, Black Friday Economic Empowerment Project. Firstly, again, thank you for the opportunity not only to discuss my business RU events, but the project Blax Friday, as well as Black businesses. To start off with the company RU events, the name RU is, it serves as a base for most Creole recipes where a rich and deep hearty flavor and texture is desired. This is how I came about with the name for the company, playing upon my background being Creole and my family originating from Lafayette, Louisiana. Here is a picture of Jerry Lee Ho Groceries. This is showing one of the first events that RU Events was able to be a part of. Acronym NOW, which stands for A Night Out With. We were able to talk with the Lee family, who had the leading grocery store in Barrio Viejo for 100 years. We were able to talk about the history, about the community, and in doing such, involving all community members in to learn as we sit on the actual land and parcel that was that historic building. Also, other projects RU Events is involved with as a project last year called Black Renaissance. Black Renaissance, we were able to spotlight local Black artists who weren't necessarily getting opportunities in our venues and most likely were being outsourced rather than using our local artists here. And so that was a great initiative that was spearheaded by Sean-Louis Dumas, who is a local artist here. We have Street Family Blues pictured in the photo. And then to the right of Street Family Blues, we have Lena Hakame from Hakame Flamenco. This was another opportunity and initiative with Jewish Family Children's Services, where they were able to partner with Rue Events and have their event downtown at the Fox Theater. Again, an opportunity of taking two spheres of different and diverse backgrounds and bringing them together in celebration. Rue also does consultation when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, working with nonprofit leaders as well as community leaders to discuss some of the challenges you may face when it comes to discussion about race. And Rue Events, we focus on the teachings of Dr. Glenn Singleton, who focused on courageous conversation with these four things in mind: to stay engaged, knowing that you may experience some discomfort, speaking truth and hearing truth, and accepting non-closure, knowing that these conversations are continual. And we use that not only with our events, but also when we discuss diversity and equity and inclusion in our community. Now, we know these are buzzwords. We always see diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in the last 7 to 8 years, it's been a highlight to new HR practices and policies. So people are really investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion and what it means for our communities. Please note that diversity, equity, and inclusion are three separate things. People tend to tie them under one umbrella, but do know that diversity is who we are, equity is what we need to succeed, and inclusion is how we get there, each being their own very important way of how we can become a more diverse community. Speaking of diverse demographics and intersectionality, I wanted to first highlight that all of these demographics are very important, but of late, in dealing with national concern as well as local concern, we are focusing in on race. Black and African Americans that have been subject to systemic racism and not given a fair opportunity to succeed. This brings us to Black Friday, the project that I'm spearheading. Our first phase of Black Friday was an accessible directory. We wanted to make sure that people were able to see these businesses and be able to connect with them directly. The next phase is a website and app. Hopefully this app will be launching this Friday. Our website launched last Friday, so we're very excited for the opportunity now for businesses to go online, claim their pages, and start to upload photos and information. And then our phase 3 is an online event that will be June 26th, which is a Friday. This online event is 30 minutes long and will focus in on businesses pitching either new ideas, existing ideas, their story, product, or service under 1 minute. This way, this puts the businesses front and center in front of their community members for support or for referrals after you hear their pitches. And then the most important part of this project is the resiliency plan, the continual support for Black businesses, knowing that this isn't a trend, knowing that this is not just for this month, but this is how we are shaping our future. Here is a snapshot of that accessible list that we put out about 2 weeks ago. Again, I was very apprehensive of putting out an uncompleted document or a document in draft form, but it seemed so important to have the community be a part of this project as well, making them inclusive into this. We didn't want to put out a list and go, this is all the businesses we have. We rather wanted to say, here's what we have so far, and we encourage you to help add to it. That accessible list then became a PDF directory that we used on social media platforms, really listing each and every business name. This was such a strong piece of collateral for the project because it really showed how many businesses we have here locally, which are just under 300. And our website, launched last Friday, currently being viewed. I'm going to be getting some analytics from the team today on how many views we got since launch. And I'm hearing all kind of great feedback from local Black businesses talking about how important this is to them to further their brand and communication to their community. Black Friday Night Live. This is the event that will be going on June 26th. It is a free and accessible event. We encourage all of our community members to tune in online and check out these businesses pitch for a minute. And then we will be actually giving away a cash prize to the best Black business pitch. Again, this prize will help them further their business, either going towards resources or at least the opportunity to start to claim their own domains for a website of their own. This would not be possible at all without community partners. RU Events focuses in on working and collaborating with other organizations to push these initiatives forward. And a positive example of this is our collaboration with Hotel Congress, as well as AC Hotel, Hotel McCoy, Hotel Tucson City Center, and the Downtown Clifton. These are all of our hotels that our community members visit and frequent and patronize. And so what a beautiful opportunity to collaborate together to focus in on messaging towards Black business. And so they have collaborated with us to push the initiative forward, with every Friday highlighting a business of their choice collectively. And then Hotel Congress and I are working on new initiatives starting this Wednesday with a Soul Food Wednesday at Hotel Congress. They'll be spotlighting Black vibes and Black broccoli, as well as Shriek Blues Family, the photo you saw earlier. So again, this is a nice event to have safely community members come out and enjoy these offerings from local Black businesses. A quick little snapshot of Hotel McCoy's beautiful plug-in for RU events when it comes to our current collaboration and partnership. Black businesses. In 1905, Blacks began to buy land on Greenwood Avenue. This road evolved into the center of Black Wall Street. Wabin Walker, The Rise and Fall of Black Wall Street. I encourage all our attendees, if they haven't heard of Black Wall Street or the Tulsa race riots, to take the opportunity to research and learn about the beginnings of Black entrepreneurship, small business, and the tragic end to what we as Black business owners look back on of what we can hopefully in the future build again. I'm going to throw a quick few infographics out about Black business nationally. This was pulled from Black Enterprise in August 2018. You can see in the infographic that it is predominantly male driven. We do have about 38% female. And the age range, I'd love to point out. Looking at the 40 to 49 range is where the majority of our Black entrepreneurs and small business owners start to launch. Here's another infographic that we pulled from Black Enterprise. Again, focusing here on the financing methods. The majority of it being cash, and then the second to that, friends and family. Looking that line of credit and unsecured loans are not backing the majority of Black businesses. It's usually pulling us up from our own bootstraps, to use that expression, and then looking towards our community and family members to help us grow. Here's a demographic from the Stanford Institute. This was in 2017. And this just shows you a graph of starting capital and investment when it comes to white-owned businesses and predominantly Black-owned businesses. Please note the huge gap when it comes to total capital investment and how some of these businesses are able to thrive through the years. The majority of Black businesses tend to reach difficulties between their 4th and 5th year, while others might try to thrive beyond that. Looking at amount raised and fundraising for your startup or small business, looking at this graph that was supplied by the Kauffman Fellows, you can see clearly that even though within our Series C to Series D, we tend to almost become equal with all white founders when it comes to startup and funds raised. But then look at Series E. This is the information that we tend to not focus in on, that although predominantly Black-owned businesses don't have necessarily enough capital to start, we tend to exceed over white founders when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to raising capital for these initiatives, which is even more reason why it is economically sound to invest in Black-owned businesses. COVID-19's effects on Black business. This is pulled from the Washington Post. As of April 2020, the US has lost nearly 450,000 active African-American business owners. That was pulled from this graph that was put out by the National Bureau of Economic Research this year. It shows the percentage change when COVID came upon us in April and the decline. Please note that negative 441,347 owners in decline there for African-American and Black businesses, as well noting our immigrant and Latinx and Asian businesses and how that affected their ownership and property due to COVID. I'd like to end this short presentation with a quote from a mentor of mine that I look up to, and that's Spike Lee. He says, "I believe in destiny, but I also believe that you can't just sit back and let destiny happen. A lot of times an opportunity might fall into your lap, but you have to be ready for that opportunity. You can't sit there waiting on it. A lot of times you're going to have to get out there and make it happen." 40 Acres and a Mule, Filmworks CEO Spike Lee. I thank you again for the opportunity to present about RU events and about Blax Friday, as well as the state of Black businesses moving forward. I'm looking forward to the Q&A for us to discuss more opportunities on how, as a community, we can support.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ashley. That
Thank
was
you.
great insight and information. And again, I don't have to say how timely it is, but it is fantastic. There was a question about the web address for the website. I figure you can put that in the chat room, some of the resources that you mentioned. Anything on the Black Friday event, I think would be great for people to know. I think that's an awesome way to engage. You know, and I was thinking, you know, and speaking about that event on that Friday, you have the pitch idea. And I've seen this rapid fire concept in other settings where businesses get a chance to promote their product or service. How would someone get involved in that? Is there, you know, can you make sure that we know how to share with our businesses, how to get in touch with you to participate?
Yes, so if it is a Black business looking to pitch for the event, they can contact me directly, either through my website, which has a nice little drop-down option to put in information. They can go to blackfriday.com in the info drop-down there. They can connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. And then if there are people who are interested on attending the event, then we're gonna have that link to share here momentarily closer. But it is a free and accessible event, and we encourage everyone to tune in for at least half an hour, maybe purchase some Black-owned business food and drink or merchandise and tune in with us.
That's awesome. That's a great way to connect and go all in, right? So if I were to ask you, given what's happening in our country right now, what do you recommend we do in terms of listening and learning? What's most important?
Most important is research. I think you'll save the time and the confusion in conversation and communication by doing due diligence and research. Taking the time not only to read Black activist books when it comes to how to be anti-racist, but also the creative end of Black culture. Books of love and discovery and film. There's more to the Black culture than just pain. And focusing in on those pain points are important, but equally, we should be researching the Black culture as a whole. And then I would say take the time to then communicate with your peers about what you've learned, conversation, and then support. You can support not only financially, but as easy as liking a page, sharing a page or business, or taking the time to do outreach and going to a business and asking, what can we do? We find this more often than none, people telling Black people and Black business owners what to do or how to do it, even though they're coming from a positive place in their heart and want to help. But it's merely more about asking, because there may be things we want to do ourselves, but need guidance on. And so that becomes that conversation piece on what we can do to help.
I love that perspective, and I think that's important. And I think there might be questions on the part of the business owners too. How do they promote, how do our small businesses promote diversity and equity in their places of business? Are there some starting points for that conversation?
Yes, I think it has to be a part of the business culture. We have to be very wary when it becomes performative, or if there are businesses that are practicing tokenism, where they're having diverse individuals present only for being there to be present, but they're not being involved in strategic meetings, they're not being consulted when things are being planned. It's the action part. That's the part we're missing. And then there's the enterprise, financial support and resources, the seed money, investment, resources. All of these things could be beneficial not only for the organization, but also for the community at large. So if you're a nonprofit, talk with other nonprofits in your same industry or interests. See what the common threads are. See how they can work together. We need more collaboration now than ever. So as our Black businesses are now referencing this list and finding each other and starting to plan how they can collaborate together, I look to the rest of our community and allies to see how they can partner and also collaborate with these businesses.
Mm-hmm. No, and I've heard the word allies come up now in the last few weeks, and I think it certainly brings a special connotation now. And I wonder, and I'll also remind everyone who's attending to, I invite your questions. So be sure if you have a question, put those in the chat box or the Q&A. But just to kind of bring this home, how do you think what's happening now is different from, say, the civil rights movement of the 1960s? What makes this different today?
I'm so happy you asked that, Barbara. I had a very similar conversation with my mother, who lived through civil rights movement and was an active part of it as well. She noted, because I turned to her, I didn't have the opportunity to live during those times. She noted how all of the world is being involved in this movement. How it may have been on a smaller scale in America in the 60s and a few spots in different cities and countries, not nationally, but globally. But now the effect is global. We're seeing these marches and support all across the world. And if people overseas can see this issue and not actually be here with us and know, then we can do our due diligence and do better. I'll just, use that word from another mentor of mine, Maya Angelou, and just do better. It's time, and we can. We have the resources to. It's just really shrugging off some really bad past ideals and moving positively towards the future.
That's powerful. No, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate your sharing your perspectives and all that you're doing, because I think it's going to make a huge difference. I think that it's going to give all of us some information that we need and an opportunity to engage that is really so perfect right now. So we will do that. Make sure if you still have questions, everyone, to continue to enter those, and we'll keep rolling. I want to make sure we have time to dive into the continuation of the reopening discussion. So we'll turn to that part of the conversation. I want to introduce Jan Lesher. Jan joined Pima County in the spring of 2010 and has served as Chief Deputy County Administrator since March 2017. Previously, she served former Arizona Governor and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano as Chief of Staff in both instances. Jan has served as Director of the Arizona Department of Commerce and the Director of the Governor's Southern Arizona Office. She's a native Tucsonan, and her professional experience is extensive in communications and marketing as well. She's even run her own company going back to 1990, Lesher Communications, handling corporate, public, and government relations for a variety of clients. She has a long list of accolades for her work in the community, but right now she's focused on Pima Back to Business, and she'll tell you a little bit about that today, along with members of her team that I want you also to meet, so I'll introduce them now as well. Mark Evans has served as the county's communications director since 2014. Prior to that, he worked for 20 years as a reporter and editor for several Southern Arizona newspapers. I understand words are his life, so that's his self-assessment. And Lonnie Anderson is the Pima County Health Department's Division Manager of Consumer Health and Food Safety. Lonnie has been a registered sanitarian in the state since 2005. While she hails from Austin, Texas, she's lived here in Pima County for 24 years. Lonnie currently serves on the City of Tucson's Commission on Food Security, Heritage, and Economy, which promotes ideas, practices, and programs to increase access to healthy foods, increase demand in markets for locally produced foods, improve local food distribution, reduce food waste, expand food industry job opportunities, and expand food entrepreneur support. She's also active with Pima County Health Department's Public Health Accreditation, Health Equity Steering Committee, and Quality in Action Committee. With all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Jan so she and her team can walk you through some important news for reopening. Jan?
Terrific, Barbara. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you. We're so pleased to have an opportunity to talk about Pima County Back to Business. Pima County Back to Business started almost 2 months ago now, and it is a framework that we've developed. We hope to provide standards so that businesses can know when to reopen in a phased manner. So there are various community and commercial business activities that we know have been struggling can find some sustained or some reopened activities. Let me tell you a little bit about the structure of the organization. Then when it comes time to tell you about the real work, I turn it over to Lonnie and Mark. But we now have about 128 people involved in one of the various task forces related to Back to Business. The first that has met and is about to start meeting again this week, it's a critical piece of it called Road to Recovery. And that is a group made up of CEOs of all the various health organizations in the community banner, Tucson Medical Center, et cetera. We also have representatives of our the federally qualified health centers such as Marana, El Rio. That committee is co-chaired by Dr. Terry Cullen, who's the new director of the Department of Health for Pima County, and Nancy Johnson, many of you know from El Rio. Their job, an easy one, is to start figuring out what the science is and how do we start to reopen appropriately and safely. I think what you hear consistently from everyone is that we are going to follow the science. They're the doctors that help us start figuring that out. They've helped us develop, if you've looked at the Pima County website, the charts and the graphs we have that show how we move from red to green, yellow to green. And unfortunately, in the last several days, as we begin to move backwards. So Road to Recovery will be meeting again in the next week to help us understand what that science means and what it means to the reopening efforts. Another committee we've had is Business Employee Health and Wellness. That was co-chaired by Amber Smith from the Chamber and Farhad Mojimi from Pima Association of Governments. What we're trying to make sure we have, that we're getting information out to everyone to know what is it a business needs to reopen? What is it that's available from the federal level in terms of grants and dollars and programs, as well as what we can do as a county. We were hearing, how can we help using perhaps the power of the county to buy in large bulk so that some of our businesses here can take advantage of getting the PPE they need for employees or for the public. So looking at that as well. Another committee has been the faith-based task force and group that's been meeting. So many individuals find it critical to begin to find ways to come back into congregate settings for faith-based activities, for those sorts of conversations to occur in these very difficult times. We also began to discover how many recovery groups meet as associated with faith-based groups and the need for those groups to come back together in a safe and meaningful way, addressing those issues. Two large committees that we're going to hear more about in a moment. One called Expediting Government Regulation. That has been co-chaired by Brent Durad, who many of you may know from the CEO of Visit Tucson, and Kathleen Erickson, from Downtown Tucson Partnership. That subdivided into three different task forces. One looking at bars and restaurants. What does it take to get them open safely and to have the public begin to feel confident going back into those kinds of facilities? We had a second group that has been dealing with resorts, pools, spas. What does it mean to come back into those organizations and to those facilities safely? That included gymnasiums as well. And then a final bucket we looked at of attractions. We have so many extraordinary attractions in the Southern Arizona area, and how do we make sure that the public's aware that they may be open, or how are they reopening in a way that meets the public's needs? Lonnie, in just a moment, will tell you a lot more about what's happening as we actually assist businesses in the reopening efforts. Another critical piece is our Community Outreach Committee, and Mark's going to go into some depth about that. That's being co-chaired by Laura Shaw, some of you know from Sun Corridor, and Raul Aguirre, who has his own business here as well. They're looking at how we get the message out first to people of within the Tucson area, Pima County area, as we reopen safely. How do we build that confidence so that local folks know they can return to the local businesses? And then over the next several months, the work of that committee will begin to expand as we not only encourage local residents to come back into Tucson, but how do we reach out nationally? And then as we begin to look at the business attraction and some of our other economic development efforts, how do we expand internationally to let people know when the time is right that Pima County is open for business again? All of those different working groups came together under the auspices of a steering committee that was co-chaired by Dr. Bobby Robbins, the president of the University of Arizona, and Chuck Huckleberry, our county administrator. And it was made up of a variety of CEOs and leaders throughout the community, including the mayors of the 5 incorporated jurisdictions here in Southern Arizona as well. So as I mentioned, all of that group came together, lots of ad hoc committees. We learned more about Zoom and MS Teams and things that I think lots of people had thought they'd ever know, but trying to make sure that we were getting the community input, hearing from representatives from not only our local communities, but the airport authorities, all the different businesses, Downtown Tucson Partnership, et cetera, coming together. And the first, as we mentioned, the Expediting Government Regulation is critical because we think that there's always lots of ways that we as government can regulate. Now it's our turn to figure out how we facilitate. What is it we can do to not only continue to engage and make sure that there's public safety and health and safety in those restaurants and bars, but that they are reopening at this very critical time. So a variety of protocols and procedures have gone into that. And I think that with that, I'd like to introduce Lonnie Anderson again, who runs our community health and food service and is the one that's been on the front line helping all the businesses, attractions and bars reopen. Lonnie.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. We appreciate the time to get to speak to everyone and engage. As Jen mentioned, the temporary measures that were put in place are to ensure that businesses and establishments can help lower the risk of COVID-19 exposure or spread in their business. The intention is to have the public come back and consume meals at the places they enjoy dining and eating at, aquatic facilities, being able to swim and feel comfortable being there. So that's what these measures are for. There are about 15 measures that we're checking for when we do our routine inspections. If we're doing any complaint investigations, we'll be checking for these measures. They're along the lines of what CDC recommends and the governor's guidance as well, ensuring that people are properly hand washing, that there are some employee wellness processes in place, signage posted for the public. Maybe they're not aware of all the symptoms or items associated with COVID so that it's visible to them as they come to the establishment, and just ensuring that the public is aware what the establishment's doing to help protect or reduce the amount of concerns that COVID could possibly spread. Face masks for the employees there, glove usage, those are different things. Social distancing, the tables being spread 6 feet apart, and also markers on the floors. Those are just different things that are in the measures that we are promoting. With consumer health, we're definitely taking the educational approach just to update facilities what the proclamation measures are and why. So when businesses see us, it's more of the educational approach to let them know what the measures are and to help them understand the intention is just that the facility, and as a business owner, you can implement measures to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. And it also, as a consumer, most people are going to want to see what you're doing to ensure that some measures are taking place. I will turn it over to Mark because I know that he's working with our team really well about communicating this process to the public, and also facilities can earn a best practice pledge badge when they do meet the measures. So we're going to recognize these establishments that are meeting the measures and that are doing the right things to ensure that they are reducing the risk of spreading COVID-19. Mark probably could give more updates on how we're going to get that message out to everyone.
Mark, if I can interrupt for just a moment before we go into the communications piece, because I wanted to just mention a project that's going to be starting in the next week that really focuses all of Lonnie's work and Mark's work in one small example, and that is a contract that we will be launching next week with the Downtown Tucson Partnership. We felt the Downtown Tucson Partnership is so unique in that while it's a defined geographic area, it represents some 40 bars and restaurants. It also includes hotels. It's got the gymnasiums. We've got about half a dozen fitness centers, and it's got some of the our art venues. We've got the Rialto and the Fox, as well as Arizona Theater Company. We're working with the downtown group to make sure that we're learning how a business can go to a business and help educate that next business, rather than having perhaps the long arm of government coming in and trying to be punitive in some way. But how do we engage together? And the goal of that, our work with the Downtown Tucson Partnership, is not only to engage those businesses, but to develop a scalable and a replicable kind of package that we can then move out to other organizations, other areas of the community throughout Pima County to help the businesses assist each other through the opening process. So stay tuned for more as we see Lonnie's team really going out and working with all of those organizations, as well as some of the interesting additional venues that occur in downtown Tucson, the public libraries, public parks, where we're seeing a lot of congregate settings as well. So really exciting opportunity to begin to see what Lonnie is doing. So thank you, Mark, for letting me step in on that. And then you can follow in and explain the wonderful world of communicating to the public.
Well,
it's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I know. I'm going to interrupt once more because, Jan, you reminded me, though, real briefly, with Downtown Tucson Partnership, a couple of the other things that we're doing that'll be kind of like a pilot program in downtown. Barbara, can you know a lot more about HAM than do I, if you'd like to? Well, there's that, but then those physical assets like the sanitation.
Okay, well, with Downtown Tucson Partnership, in addition to working with each business, there's a couple of additional opportunities. We're looking at some grant opportunities first that's going to be through Downtown Tucson Partnership that allows small amounts of money to go to each of the businesses that assist them in any of their reopening. We are providing funds as well through DTP for architectural design, as well as ability to perhaps expand the premises for those businesses downtown that can actually expand premises and have more outdoor eating opportunities. We're adding a good variety of hand sanitation, hand washing stations that are in all the public areas throughout downtown as part of that, looking for the direction and assistance from DTP. And we're also looking at, I think they're called the big bellies, the touchless solar-powered trash cans that are going into the downtown area as well. So we're going to see those physical improvements come in, again, throughout the business improvement district. Another element that's going to be interesting to watch is there's another component that we will be doing with Downtown Tucson Partnership, and I believe their partnership with Rio Nuevo, again, to actually look at testing of employees, which I think is going to be another component between testing and contact tracing. That's going to be a critical component of opening all of our businesses. So thank you, Barbara, for the reminder.
Thank you, because I just wanted people to be aware of all the different layers of things that you're doing on that end, and how that this is really trying it out so we can move these things into the community broader. Mark, yes, it's time for Mark. Sorry.
I'm done. Jan checked off almost all my boxes. So the goal of the Community Updates Committee and the communication effort that we're doing is to take all this work that has been done by all these committees that has been essentially boiled down into the proclamation, and explain it to the public. So having the proclamation and having this kind of behind the scenes in the back of the house inspections being done by the county is all well and good, but then what does that mean for the public? They need to know that the county is working in partnership with the business community to create consumer confidence during the pandemic, that these facilities are doing everything that the county believes they need to be doing in order to protect the public and to their own employees. And so what we're doing is creating the program for educating the public into what it is. So the proclamation calls for businesses that meet the requirements of the county's rules or the rules of the proclamation, is to get a badge, a sign that they can put in their door that identifies them of having met these requirements. And so we've created that. We're going to start dispensing them and distributing them out into the community for the businesses that have already qualified for them. But it doesn't mean anything if people don't recognize it. If they walk up and it's just another sticker on the door, they need to know what it means and what is the value behind it. And so we are working with a local advertising agency to do some pretty significant advertising over the next month to really acclimate the public to the program, to understand what the program means, to understand what the badge means, and to recognize it on site and give it a value. Because it's one thing to recognize it, it's another thing not to know what the value of that symbol means. And that means that this facility is following the guidance set by the county through this extensive process that the county embarked upon back in April with the Back to Business program. So that's initial, what we're working on right now. Going forward into the summer, we will work on other longer term messaging that will also work for as the various initiatives of Back to Business come online, such as what Jan just talked about with the Downtown Tucson Partnership. I believe you've already done a webinar on the Hound program. Anybody who's listening in who is unaware of Hound, there's information on both the county and the city's website. It is, and I'll let Barbara describe it, because every time I describe it, I get corrected. But it is a business assistance program where businesses can sign up for participating in the program. The county and the city have agreed to help those initial signups. And then the public can then use that to purchase gift certificates, receive discounts and so forth. And it's to help the businesses get that shot in the arm that they need, you know, now that we are trying to reopen our businesses post shutdown. Yeah. And that's primarily what we're doing. Some of it, we're also doing some direct communications to businesses. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of anxiety. And so we're also going to try to provide information directly to businesses so they know what to expect. They know what we're doing, keeping them in the loop, being partners with them is really important to us, as well as doing the public outreach.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank all of you. Those are great programs. And I was thinking about the badge. I think that's a great way for our businesses to show what they're doing and to help restore that consumer confidence. So I think that the badge program will be fantastic. And I want to make sure that you put maybe something in the chat room so that everyone can figure out to learn more about that, where they should go or who they should reach out to, because I think that would be a good thing for our businesses to start connecting with you on. I'm looking at a question here from Cornelia. She's asking, how are you reaching out to small businesses? As a small business, had no idea about most of the programs mentioned today. So again, but another great reason why we're doing these webinars, because it takes a lot of conversation. So maybe you can share more too. I know you've mentioned the major outreach marketing campaign that you're doing and the advertising you'll be doing, but maybe you can share more about that.
And let me start with that, in that I think part of why I'm recognizing the fact that so many businesses may not be aware of what we're doing is because we have focused initially on those businesses that over which we have some regulatory authority. And that really is the area of the bars and the restaurants and the public health and safety aspect of this. As the county, we're the public health entity. We don't do business licensing and the same kind of activities as we reach out to operate the businesses. So we've begun to recognize that while we have some 7,000 licenses for food applications, and Lonnie can correct me, but so many, particularly those include schools and every place else. But when you look at all the restaurants that are out there, the people that have a food license or a food permit, we can contact those individuals. We put surveys out, on the website now and then. Downtown Tucson Partnership has put out surveys, but it really is inside baseball to a great extent at this point, and we're trying to find more ways, working with our new agency, to get that communication going out. There's a survey that will be going out as part of that activity to the full general public that we hope will not only help us understand what would make you as an individual more confident and feel better going back into one of these newly open facilities, so that we can make sure we're addressing that. And then how do we make sure that all the businesses are involved? Part of that is our ability through the general public information, but then, as I mentioned, through the various committees, we've tried to connect with those organizations that represent other businesses. As I mentioned, the steering committee, it's got all of the chambers of commerce throughout the valley. We've got our mayors, we've got others. But we would welcome anybody that's got any other ideas about how we're missing people, if there's ways to get additional information out. We would certainly appreciate that. And I know Mark can put some information in the chat rooms, including how to just log on to our website, which provides an opportunity to learn more about back to business, but also to provide any comments or feedback.
That's great. And because it is an interesting time with reopening, I know that as you go out, and as each one of us goes out and starts to visit businesses again, we see a lot of different approaches to reopening, right? So everyone's doing it a little bit differently, and that's why I think some of the guidance is so important. And I know that, as you mentioned, your committees may start meeting, or the task force may start convening again because our cases are rising. So I think it's going to be important for our businesses to find those best practices to follow, so that we can see, what is the best course of action. Is it masks for everyone? Is it social distancing measures in certain ways that it starts to feel comfortable when we visit these businesses? So,
and I think it gets so hard, Barbara, this time of year. Lonnie can speak to this. As we're seeing, folks, it's 108 degrees, and we all want to go to a swimming pool, and we're not opening the public pools at this point in the cities and the counties. It is very difficult to to put a bunch of kids in a pool and have them not want to reach out to each other. It's the other issue that we've just started looking at, and I know there were meetings occurring next week, and all of you in business know, either as the business person yourself or with your employees, one of the greatest barriers that we're seeing to reopen is not only the confidence of the public, but frankly is daycare and childcare. And that's been a big issue for many, many people, that the ability to have, what is precluding them from coming back easily to business is the fact that with the schools closed, and many of our daycare facilities closed, it's very difficult to raise your children in that way. And it's been a stumper for us in that we have money, we may have buildings, but I don't know how we're trying to identify the best practices and the ways, again, that you can convene children in an environment in which they don't socially, where they're appropriately keeping away from each other. And if they are, they're not the way my children were. And they eat dirt, and it's just, there's a lot that's involved in keeping those kids safe and healthy. So we've got to try to figure those things out as well.
It's amazing, all the different moving parts we took for granted right before the COVID descended on us. And I think it is certainly a new reality, and we're trying to figure it out. So again, we're still taking questions. If any of you have some questions for the group here, for anyone that's been a panelist, I'm sure they would be happy to answer. And I'll respond to Mark's bringing up the Hound opportunity, the marketing platform. I experimented this weekend. I patronized my first Hound business that showed up on the platform. So I had some new first-time barbecue at Brushfire Barbecue. So they are on the platform, as well as a variety of others. There's, you know, everything from food and restaurant to massage to chocolate and coffee. And so there are a variety of different options that you can find on My Hound. And that's what everyone needs to do, is download the app now as a consumer. You go to your favorite app store and download the My Hound app. It's HOWND. And that way you'll be ready to go, and you'll start to see the businesses that are popping up on the platform and offering these opportunities. They have gift vouchers as well as coupons and types of, you know, promotional offers that you can take advantage of. And I think it's a great way to not only introduce yourself to maybe some new businesses for you, but to really help them in a time where they're trying to rebuild their customers and rebuild their businesses as quickly as they can. So I think that's awesome, and I'm glad we're doing that together. I'm looking at to check and see if there are other questions, but again, I think we've had a really good discussion here today, and I do think you know, we're all going to be looking for best practices and ways to get back in the doors of our favorite businesses. And I know I carry my mask with me, and I still do that because I know if there's wait staff that have their face covering on, then I want to use my face covering, you know, back at them. So I have, you know, adopted that as a personal practice. And we just have to, you know, again, it's new for us, but we have to get over, it's like going back to even what Ashley said earlier, we're going to be uncomfortable in a lot of situations going forward. And so not only the tough conversations around our differences, but the tough conversations about whether to wear a mask or not. And you know, does it match my outfit? I mean, you know, it's really important. So, right. So I think it is an interesting time, but I think we're all trying to do so. And then Mark is putting some great information in the chat room about wearing masks when out in public. Again, many states and other communities have adopted that as a practice, and we have been more, I guess, lenient in terms of decision making, but I think we're all wanting to do the right thing. And if you have thoughts on that, Jan, in terms of how you perceive, how you want businesses to feel, or if they have questions about that, who they can ask for advice.
Sure. And we are putting a lot more information out there about masks. Actually, the county just established a rule on Thursday that it's now required for all county employees and people who come into a county building in public areas. And we don't have to sit in the office right now, but more and more. It's interesting in that I was in a conversation earlier today when someone was commenting that they'd been out, they'd been around people, they didn't think they were feeling that sick, and even if they got it, it wouldn't be that bad. And folks pointed out to them that they might not feel that sick, but they might give it to their 90-year-old grandmother, who might be hit a lot harder. So I think our message on our mask is, it's not for you, it's for everyone else. And that's how we have to think about it. We have been chatting about how do we delineate those businesses that are using masks more. And I think we all are getting those anecdotal stories of, I hear people describing, oh, this grocery store I went to and everybody was wearing a mask. I went to another one and no one was. How do we find ways to acknowledge those businesses that are doing things so well so that the public knows about that? How do we feel comfortable telling each other you know, that we appreciate it if someone around us put on a mask, you know, and those are those uncomfortable conversations. I'm old enough to remember what, you know, we used to have to tell people to put out the cigarette because there was a lot more smoking in public, and now we've managed to make it a norm, and so maybe masks will soon be there as well. And I think the other wonderful byproduct is what you're looking at today. The city and the county have partnered on many opportunities to expand business in the downtown. As I mentioned, all of the mayors of the incorporated jurisdictions within Pima County come together regularly to talk about how we take up the same message together and how we advocate for all the folks in this area, whether they're in one of the incorporated jurisdictions or not. So a lovely byproduct, I think, that's occurred.
There was a question at this time, our city and bars, restaurant staff required to wear masks, and Mark has indeed indicated that as of the county's proclamation that is a requirement. So again, hopefully people will start to catch on that that's a real thing, and business owners will instruct their staff to do so, because I know it can show up differently in the places that you're visiting. But we know that's a good practice. So I appreciate
and I think, Barbara, it's one of the ways we're hoping through Back to Business that we can assist, as I mentioned. How can we help with bulk purchases? That if one of the barriers to having one of our local businesses be able to succeed by meeting the standards, if what they need then is those personal protective equipment, if they need those masks, if they need the gloves, we will be developing ways for people to reach out, link into those portals, and see what might be available to them. We can only buy what we can buy. There's limited resources, but what we can buy, we will be more than willing to share. We'll be doing so with the public. So hopefully that's a barrier that we can get out of the way.
That's great to hear, and we'll be happy to promote that too when you have more information on that. So we will we'll try to keep all of the resources available to folks. Any other final comments from any of our panelists today? Lonnie, did you have?
Sorry. Thank you for that message. That is accurate. And a lot of the places may not know fully about the proclamation. So that is another reason Consumer Health is approaching it more in an educational approach. So we're letting them know these are what the measures are. Also kind of giving that background of the public health rationale behind the reasons of those measures. The other thing, someone wrote that they weren't wearing a mask at their favorite restaurant. You can contact our department and we can reach out to those facilities and update them. So we are addressing concerns for the public related to any of the measures that may not be met, or maybe you perceive they're not following the measures correctly. Those are things that our department will address. So part of that is just getting them the knowledge of what the new requirement or the proclamation is. So reaching out to Consumer Health and Food Safety is also a way to update that establishment if they're not already aware of the proclamation.
Okay, that's great. And Mark is putting the information in the chat room as to where you can let people know about your concerns for restaurants and bars. And again, for those on the phone, the pima.gov website, you can go there and go to the COVID-19 resources. The Back to Business information is all there. There's a reminder from someone, they would love Ashley to put your email address, I think, in the chat room so that they can reach out to you if they are businesses and interested, or community members interested in the events that you shared. So please do that. And I think
Barbara, if I may, before we leave the panel, I'll be sure to add my email into the chat. I just want, while I have this time on this platform, to truly encourage all of our community members to reach out to our Black businesses. They have felt neglected through generations, and the majority of them are outside of our business, the bid, as it were, downtown. So if there's any opportunity or resources and links, I'd be happy to pass those forward so they can also practice safety through these COVID times. Thank you.
Fantastic. No, and I appreciate that. And it is important. It's why, again, the city and the county teamed up for programs like My Hound, because it does extend beyond the special districts that have, you know, an alliance or a group of merchants. Not all businesses have that. And so, as you mentioned, there's a lot of businesses that are sort of out there going it alone. And we want to be sure that they are plugged in and have the same access to resources. So again, it's going to take everyone on this webinar. If you're listening in today and you joined us today, it's going to take all of us to spread this message and to do our part. And so that's my sort of parting encouragement today, is that you can make a difference and you will make a difference. So let's get out there and do that. You've gotten some good ideas today. So thanks again to all our panelists. Thank you, Ashley, Jan, Lonnie, Mark, and we will keep our resources flowing on connecttucson.com. So again, as we wrap up, remember to join us again next Monday at 3 p.m. We'll keep going. You can register when you see the email invite in your inbox, and we will keep you connected during this pandemic and as we hopefully recover quickly from it. But don't forget, you can also call our small business hotline, 520-837-4100. And you can also sign up for our newsletter email updates on connecttucson.com. Just scroll down on the homepage and you'll see that opportunity there. So again, with that, I'm going to check one more time before we pause. There's a lot of thank yous. Everyone loved your information. So thank you again, panelists. And for everyone, have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara.
Welcome.